It's difficult to see how Labour survives this, which is basically an act of treachery by a government with a landslide majority, dumping a prime minister after barely 2 years and simply absorbing into the vacuum that remains, a person who has simply decided he wants to be prime minister. The simple fact is that Keir Starmer was not up to the job from the moment he started, and it rapidly became clear, even to his own side, that he was a political dud and a liability to the party. I think when prime ministers resign, there's always an attempt to say good things about them. It's going to be very difficult when it comes to Keir Starmer. I'm Trevor Kavanagh, and I was political editor of The Sun for nearly 25 years, and I've been writing political columns for the last 20 years.
Is a Andy Burnham premiership an absolute certainty now, or will the Labour Party try to block him?
What happens now is the biggest question. It looks at this point that Andy Burnham has simply seized the crown without anyone's apparent support in the country, apart from Macclesfield, which was a protest against Starmer, not necessarily applause for Andy Burnham. And the thing about Andy Burnham is that he bears a remarkable similarity to Keir Starmer in at least one respect, which is that nobody knows what he stands for. I mean, he talks about change, but every time he's put on the spot about what that change entails, he ducks and dives and U-turns on almost everything that he's said and stood for in the past. For instance, the European Union, will we rejoin? Will we spend money on defence at the expense of welfare? I doubt that. The Labour Party won't put up with it. So we're in for a very turbulent time over the coming weeks as Andy Burnham, first of all, picks his cabinet. First of all, actually takes office. I mean, we don't know how soon he's likely to be in the job. For the moment, we have a caretaker prime minister who lacks all authority, and he's about to go off to NATO summits and European meetings without any vestige of power to be able to say or deliver. So, I mean, look, this is really serious at a time when we have huge debts which rely on our stability at home for the trust and support of the financial markets.
Do you think in that case, in terms of economically, can the economy survive months of a zombie government, or will Keir get booted out sooner?
Yes, I think the Labour Party and its members have to make very big decisions very, very soon. They have to decide whether they want to carry on being rudderless and leaderless, whether they have a proper election for a new leader so that other candidates are given a chance to stand, or whether they simply hand Andy Burnham, the pretender, the crown without him having to actually demonstrate any justification for having taken it. And this is going to cause, in the coming weeks and months, enormous turbulence on the markets in terms of the view of Britain, its stability, its economy, its ability to run a nation. And the people who will be making those judgments are the ones who hold the purse strings for our economy. These are the markets that Andy Burnham wants to buck, who actually fund the huge national debt and the interest, the mountain of interest that we have to pay to keep us afloat. If he does anything that makes them worry about their money, then they will stop it. They won't pay it, and we're all in trouble then.
Why should we trust Labour at all now? This is our sixth prime minister in a decade. It's just chaotic all the time. What's the future of the party?
Should we trust Labour? Well, frankly, I've never trusted Labour. Labour cannot run a country or rule as a government unless it is spending money, taxpayers' money. The government has no money of its own. It has to rely on taxation and it has to rely on borrowing. And in the end, you run out of other people's money. So I think that they have no idea about tax cutting, the idea that lower taxes increase prosperity and productivity. That doesn't work for them. They want to lavish money on the voters that they regard as captive Labour fodder. They are the people on welfare, the people who take benefits, and that's where the money will go, whoever is the Labour Prime Minister in control of this particular Labour Party.
We could hear hymns blaring and fierce protesters right outside the gates of Downing Street as Sir Keir gave his exit speech. Does that striking contrast sum up how disconnected his inner circle became from the British public?
I think we've watched Labour sort of disintegrate before our very eyes over the last 18 months, particularly. But it started even earlier than that. And I think that the vast majority of the country is not on the side of Labour or the left or its policies on all sorts of things, particularly welfare and benefits and immigration defence, right across the board. The support for the Conservative Party, the Reform and Restore together add up to the views of most of the people in this country, and they don't like what Labour has done, and especially what they've done to the economy, to jobs for young people, to the bailouts for people who simply don't want to work, and the two-tiered approach to just about everything on a political basis instead of the fair, even-handed way that the British people have been accustomed to.
Looking at the big picture, what do you think was the absolute fatal blow to his premiership?
I think it began right at the start when Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, was forced simply because she had promised in her manifesto deceitfully not to raise taxes or VAT and was hamstrung because she desperately needed billions and billions of pounds to lavish on welfare, which is what the left of the Labour Party want. That had immediate repercussions. First of all, it meant that employers couldn't afford to employ because they had to pay basically a jobs tax. We saw young people unable to get jobs, and parents could see that their prospects were pretty poor for the future. And we saw Keir Starmer having accepted from Lord Alli huge amounts of largesse, free suits, free specs, free gowns for his wife Victoria. And I think that's when suddenly people began to wonder, what on earth have we given, what on earth have we put into power here? And from then on, the evidence piled up. I mean, there was all sorts of evidence. Peter Mandelson's been cited as one of the biggest examples, and indeed it is. But it wasn't the only one. It was simply the culmination of a catalogue of broken promises, ruthless, brutal sort of suppression of dissent from the public on things like smashing the gangs, stopping the boats. Nothing was done on that. And I think that that is one of the biggest issues of the day. And I think that on that one alone, Keir Starmer and the Labour Party itself have failed dismally.
Why do you think Sir Keir did all that? You know, when taking those the corporate hospitality, you know, the optics are just awful. Was it hubris? Is it just what happens when you come into power?
I think this was entirely a Keir Starmer approach to politics, which is that he has no antenna, he has no principles, no ideology. He doesn't really know why he's in office. I mean, I'm not just saying this is what people have said, and indeed he himself has indicated that he doesn't really like politics at all. And he's also very difficult when it comes to oration. He cannot spell out what he means and says and stands for. These are absolutely crucial tools of any politician, but especially a prime minister leading a country through what are genuinely difficult times.
We saw an uncharacteristically emotional speech from Keir Starmer today. Why do you think he broke down after months of trying to project a robotic, steady as he goes image?
I think that even tyrants get emotional at times. I'm not saying that actually Keir Starmer was a tyrant, but I do think that he had a dogged, ruthless streak which took him through all sorts of crises. But when it comes to actually resigning, not through your own volition, but being forced out of office, having in your own mind at least believed that you've done the best job you possibly could, and having won a large majority, I think you can understand why someone feels emotional about being forced out of the job.
In the speech, Starmer explicitly asked if he was the best person to lead. For a sitting Prime Minister, that's an astonishing admission of failure. Is that a genuine moment of self reflection, or was he pushed to say it?
It's a very difficult position for Keir Starmer. He did lead the Labour Party to a landslide victory. He's got a 170 seat majority. The simple fact is that he came into office 2 years ago without a clue about what he was going to do with that power and authority and majority. I think the legacy of Keir Starmer is to have taken Britain into a series of policy blunders, which are going to be very difficult to reverse, both on economics, on tax and spending and borrowing. Our national debt is gigantic. On immigration, which is far too high and needs to be cut and won't be under Labour, and on particularly on defence at a time when Britain does, and in fact Europe does face a threat from Russia. And we have, I think, the British government has betrayed the trust here of the British people in its first duty, which is the defence of the realm.
There was an incredibly loud applause from his team inside Downing Street after he finished. If he was sabotaged by over 100 of his own backbenchers and half his cabinet, who exactly was left in that room cheering for him?
Those cheers were pure theatrics, and obviously there are some people in that room, staff particularly, who have worked with him, who genuinely like him. And I mean, by reputation, he is a likable man. But the simple fact is that the overwhelming opinion of the great British public was expressed in the Makerfield by-election, not in the support of Andy Burnham particularly, but in the deliberate determination by voters in that constituency to get rid of Keir Starmer, and by using Andy Burnham as the lever to pull in order to achieve that. The overwhelming feeling, and this is a slight, it isn't hatred towards Keir Starmer, it is contempt. And the contempt began to build in the party right from the very beginning. And I think actually his days were numbered for a long period of his term in office. And we were describing him way back last year as a dead man walking. We were saying that he couldn't survive as leader, and so were his MPs privately. So it's very difficult to find any redeeming features in the man who has been leading this country for barely 2 years.